Millionaire CEO froze in the store after seeing his ex-wife return baby formula she couldn't afford. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Family, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, today I bow my heart before you with deep gratitude and faith. Please cover every woman in this family with your divine protection. Give her strength when she is tired, peace when she is overwhelmed, and dignity that no hardship can ever take away. She is the backbone of every home, the silent fighter, the soul that loves without limits. Bless her health, her mind, her heart, and her future. Let no pain break her, no sorrow weaken her, and no struggle make her feel alone. Bless every family here with unity, healing, and hope. Remove fear from our hearts and replace it with courage. Turn worries into wisdom, tears into strength, and prayers into answered blessings. Let love rule our homes and kindness guide our words. My beautiful family, I speak from my heart. When you stay with the story till the end, when you like and comment, it gives value to the effort, love, and sleepless nights behind every word. This family grows only when we support each other. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, I am with Mr. Peter. Let's start with love. The conference hall in downtown Chicago held over 800 architects, but Lita Lewis only saw one face in the crowd. Her husband sat in the third row, his expression unreadable as the man on stage presented her life's work as his own. The sustainable housing concept addresses the critical need for affordable, eco-conscious living spaces, Gregory Mitchell declared, his silver hair catching the spotlight as he gestured toward the massive screens displaying Lita's designs. Her designs. Every line, every curve, every innovative solution she'd spent 18 months developing. This project will revolutionize how we approach low-income housing in urban environments. Lita's hands trembled in her lap. She'd submitted the proposal to Mitchell's firm 6 weeks ago as part of their collaborative initiative. He was Liam's mentor, the man who'd shaped her husband's entire career. When Mitchell had invited her to present alongside him today, she'd thought it meant recognition, partnership. Instead, she sat in the audience watching her visions stolen in real time. The morning sickness she'd been battling for weeks intensified. She pressed a hand to her stomach, where a secret neither she nor Liam knew about, yet grew with each passing day. She'd planned to tell him tonight, after the conference, when they'd celebrate what she'd thought would be her breakthrough moment. The integration of solar absorption materials with rainwater harvesting creates a self-sustaining ecosystem, Mitchell continued, clicking through slides that showed her handwritten notes, her sketches, her innovations presented as his genius. A young architect in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Mitchell, I've seen similar concepts attributed to Lita Lewis. Did you collaborate with her on this? The room shifted. Heads turned. Lita felt hundreds of eyes searching for her. Mitchell's smile never wavered. Mrs. Scott worked as a junior consultant on the preliminary research. Of course, the core architectural vision and implementation strategy came from our senior team. Junior consultant. The words hit like a physical blow. Lita stood, her chair scraping loudly in the silent auditorium. She needed air, needed to escape before she vomited or screamed or both. But as she moved toward the aisle, the moderator's voice stopped her. We have time for one more question before the panel discussion. A woman near the back stood. This question is for Liam Scott of Henderson and Associates. Your firm competed for the same grant funding. You've seen both proposals. In your professional opinion, whose original concept was this? The room went completely still. Lita turned, finding Liam in the crowd. He was already looking at her, his face pale. He knew. Of course he knew. He'd seen her work scattered across their dining table for months, had listened to her talk through problems at midnight, had held her when she cried from frustration, and laughed when she made breakthroughs. Liam, the moderator prompted. Gregory Mitchell placed a hand on Liam's shoulder as he stood. A warning, a reminder of everything the older man controlled: partnerships, recommendations, the career path Liam had been climbing since graduate school. Lita watched her husband's face. She saw the calculation behind his eyes, the quick assessment of costs and benefits that made him brilliant at his job. She saw the moment he made his choice. The concept, Liam said slowly, his voice steady and professional, came from a collaborative process between our firms. Architecture at this level is rarely the product of a single vision. Not a lie, not the truth. Just careful, cowardly words that protected everyone except her. Something inside Lita shattered so completely, she wondered if the people around her could hear it break. Mitchell beamed. Exactly right. Collaboration is the foundation of innovation. The moderator thanked Liam and moved on. The panel discussion began. People asked questions about materials and costs and zoning challenges, and Lita stood frozen in the aisle as her entire world rearranged itself around a single, devastating truth. Her husband had just watched her get erased and said nothing. She walked out. Not dramatically, not running. Just one foot in front of the other until she reached the lobby, then the street. Then she was standing in October wind that cut through her blazer and made her eyes water. Or maybe those were tears. She couldn't tell anymore. Her phone buzzed. Liam calling. She rejected it. It rang again immediately. She turned it off. A taxi stopped at her raised hand, and she gave their apartment address because she had nowhere else to go. The driver tried to make conversation about the weather, the traffic, the Cubs. Lita stared out the window and saw nothing. Their apartment was empty when she arrived. Liam would stay for the networking lunch, the afternoon sessions, the cocktail hour where deals got made and careers got built. He'd come home late with apologies and explanations, probably with flowers, definitely with reasons why what he'd done made sense. Lita walked through rooms that suddenly felt like someone else's life. Wedding photos on the mantel showed a couple she didn't recognize anymore. The woman in those pictures had believed in partnership, in standing together, in love that meant something when tested. She pulled her largest suitcase from the closet and began to pack. Her hands moved mechanically. Clothes, toiletries, the jewelry box her grandmother had given her. She left behind everything Liam had bought her. The designer dresses, the expensive shoes, the necklace he'd presented at their anniversary dinner. She took only what had been hers before him. In the bathroom, her hand hovered over the pregnancy test she'd hidden in the back of a drawer. She'd taken it yesterday morning, stared at those 2 pink lines with joy and terror warring in her chest. She'd imagined Liam's face when she told him, how he'd lift her off her feet and spin her around like he had when she'd accepted his proposal. That future died today in a conference hall. Lita threw the test in the trash. Then, thinking better of it, she pulled it out and tucked it in her purse. Not as a memory, as a reminder of the choice she was about to make. She would have this baby alone. She would build her career alone. She would prove that her vision, her talent, her voice mattered, even if the man who'd promised to love her couldn't find the courage to say so in public. Her phone powered back on as she zipped her suitcase shut. 17 missed calls from Liam, a dozen texts. Where are you? We need to talk. Please don't do anything rash. I can explain. She typed one message back. You already explained everything. Then she blocked his number, called another taxi, and left behind the only life she'd known since moving to Chicago. The taxi driver asked where to this time. Lita opened her banking app, looked at the savings account she'd kept separate from their joint finances. Enough for a few months if she was careful. Enough for a fresh start if she was brave. The bus station, she said. Going somewhere nice? Lita touched her stomach, where something smaller than a poppy seed was already changing everything. Somewhere he'll never think to look. The city blurred past her window. Somewhere in a conference hall, Liam was probably realizing she'd really left. Somewhere in a future she couldn't yet see, she'd be standing on her own 2 feet, raising a child, building a life from the wreckage of this one. But right now, in the back of a taxi, heading toward an unknown destination, Lita Lewis made herself a promise. She would never let anyone silence her again. The bus station was chaos, crying children, impatient travelers, announcements echoing off concrete walls. Lita studied the departure board with clinical detachment. Not west toward family, who'd ask questions. Not south where Liam had connections. Not east where she'd be too close to memories. North, Detroit. A city rebuilding itself, where architects with vision and no money could still make a difference. Where no one knew her name or her story or her shame. She bought a ticket with cash. Waiting for her bus, she felt her phone vibrate with blocked call attempts. She imagined Liam at their apartment now, seeing the empty closet, the missing suitcase, the life she'd extracted from their shared space, like pulling a thread from fabric. Would he search for her? Probably. Would he find her? Not if she was careful. Would he even understand why she'd left? That was the question that hurt most. Because if he truly understood, he never would have stayed silent in the first place. Final boarding for Detroit, the announcement crackled overhead. Lita stood, gripping the handle of her suitcase. One last moment to change her mind, to go back, to believe that love could survive cowardice. But she'd seen his face when he made his choice. She'd heard him reduce her work to collaborative process. She'd watched him pick his career over her dignity. And she was carrying his child, a child who deserved to see their mother stand up for herself, fight back, refuse to disappear. Lita Lewis walked onto that bus and didn't look back. Behind her, Chicago glittered in the late afternoon sun, beautiful and indifferent to one woman's broken heart. Ahead of her, Detroit waited in the gathering darkness, a city of ruins and renaissance, where she would learn that the hardest thing about starting over isn't leaving the past behind. It's forgiving yourself for ever believing the lies. Chapter 2. Rebirth in Ashes. The apartment in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood smelled like mildew and old paint, but the rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask questions. Lita stood in the center of the empty studio, her suitcase at her feet, and wondered if this was what rock bottom looked like. Through the single window, she could see abandoned buildings across the street, their windows like missing teeth in a broken smile. This wasn't the life she'd imagined, this wasn't the future she'd planned, but it was hers, and hers alone. That first night, she slept on the floor, wrapped in her coat, because she couldn't afford a mattress yet. Morning sickness woke her before dawn, and she vomited into the rusty sink while November wind rattled the window frame. When she was done, she looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "You have to." The construction company hired her despite her obvious pregnancy. They needed drafters, people who could read blueprints and spot problems before they became disasters. The pay was terrible, the hours were brutal, but Lita showed up every day with her hard hat and her determination, and slowly she stopped feeling like she was drowning. Shane was born on a Tuesday in June, screaming his way into the world with Lita's determination and Liam's eyes. She held him in the hospital room, alone, because there was no one else, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not healing exactly, but purpose. "You and me," she whispered against his tiny forehead. "We're going to be just fine." She named him Shane because it meant gift from God, and that's what he was. A gift she didn't deserve, but would spend every day earning. The months blurred together in a haze of exhaustion. Lita went back to work when Shane was 6 weeks old, leaving him with an elderly neighbor who charged less than the daycares. She drafted blueprints during the day, took freelance design work at night after Shane fell asleep, and learned to function on coffee and sheer stubborn will. Her notebooks filled with designs, better housing, smarter sustainability, innovations that could change how cities approached affordable living. She'd sketch until her hand cramped, then hold Shane against her chest and promise him that someday, it would all mean something. When Shane was 8 months old, Lita noticed he didn't respond to loud noises. At first, she told herself she was paranoid, exhausted, imagining problems. But mothers know. Deep in their bones, they know when something's wrong. The audiologist's office smelled like sanitizer and broken dreams. Moderate to severe hearing loss in both ears, the doctor said, her voice gentle but clinical. We'll need to fit him for hearing aids. There are programs that can help with cost, therapy options, early intervention. Lita stopped hearing the words. She looked at Shane in her lap, babbling happily at his own fingers, completely unaware that his world was different from everyone else's, that he'd faced challenges she couldn't protect him from, that loving him wouldn't be enough to fix this. How much? She asked. For everything. The hearing aids, the therapy, all of it. The numbers the doctor quoted made Lita's vision blur. She walked out of that office with pamphlets and payment plans and a new understanding of what the word impossible actually meant. That night, after Shane fell asleep, she sat on the floor of their apartment and let herself cry for the first time since leaving Chicago. Not for herself, for him, for the little boy who deserved every advantage and was instead getting a mother who could barely afford groceries. But crying solved nothing, so she dried her tears and got to work. She picked up a third job cleaning offices on weekends. She sold everything she owned that wasn't absolutely necessary. She applied for every grant, every assistance program, every scholarship she could find. And slowly, painfully, she scraped together enough for Shane's first pair of hearing aids. The day they fitted them, Shane was almost a year old. Lita watched the audiologist place the tiny devices in his ears, watched them turn them on, and held her breath. Shane's eyes went wide. He looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time, even though it was sound that had changed. Then he looked at Lita and smiled so big her heart nearly stopped. "Mama," he said, his first word, clear as crystal. Lita sobbed right there in the doctor's office, holding her son and laughing and crying and thanking God for small miracles in the middle of impossible circumstances. The years crawled by, each one a little easier than the last. Shane grew into a bright, curious little boy who asked endless questions and built elaborate structures from whatever he could find. He looked so much like Liam, it sometimes hurt to look at him. But Lita learned to see Shane as his own person. Not a reminder of what she'd lost, but evidence of what she'd survived. By the time Shane was starting preschool, Lita had clawed her way to a junior position at a small architecture firm. It wasn't the career she'd dreamed of, but it was architecture, and that mattered. She designed strip malls and office renovations and told herself that every project was practice for something bigger. At night, she still sketched her real ideas, still designed the housing projects that could transform communities, still believed, despite everything, that her voice mattered. Shane's preschool teacher pulled her aside one afternoon when she came for pickup. "He's incredibly bright," Mrs. Rodriguez said, smiling, "but he keeps asking about his father. I wanted to give you a heads up in case he brings it up at home." Lita's chest tightened. "What does he ask?" "Where his daddy is, why he doesn't have one like the other kids." Mrs. Rodriguez's expression softened. "I told him all families look different, but he's persistent." That night, Shane sat at their small kitchen table coloring while Lita made dinner. Pasta again, because it was cheap and he'd actually eat it. "Mama?" His voice was small, careful. "Yes, baby?" "Tommy has a daddy who picks him up from school, and Jasmine's daddy came to show and tell." He didn't look up from his coloring. Why don't I have a daddy? Lita's hands stilled on the pasta pot. She'd known this conversation was coming, had practiced answers in her head 1,000 times, but none of them felt right when faced with her son's actual question. She sat down beside him, turning his chair so they faced each other. "You do have a daddy," she said carefully, "but he and we couldn't be together anymore. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt, even when they don't mean to." Shane's forehead wrinkled in concentration. "Did he hurt you?" "Not the way you're thinking, but yes, he hurt my feelings very badly." "Is he a bad man?" Lita took a breath. This was the moment she could poison her son against his father, could paint Liam as a villain and herself as the hero. But Shane deserved better than her bitterness. "No," she said honestly. "He's not a bad man. He wasn't strong enough to be the kind of daddy you deserve." Shane thought about this, his little fingers tracing patterns on the table. Could he get stronger? The question hit like a punch. Could Liam change? Could cowardice be unlearned? Could silence be broken? "I don't know, baby. Maybe. People can surprise you sometimes." "Do you think he knows about me?" Lita's throat closed. "No. He doesn't know you exist." "Oh." Shane picked up his crayon again, accepting this the way kids accept rain or bedtime or any other fact of life. "Can I show you what I drawed?" Just like that, the conversation ended, and Lita was left staring at her son's drawing of their apartment, complete with stick figures of her and him, and wondering if she'd made the right choice keeping Shane a secret, wondering if Liam ever thought about her, wondering if, somewhere in Chicago, he still believed his silence had been justified. Later that night, after Shane was asleep, Lita pulled out her most recent design project, a competition for innovative community housing sponsored by a National Architecture Foundation. The prize was substantial, the recognition life-changing. Entries had to be submitted under a professional name, and she'd been using her grandmother's maiden name, Marcus Chen, to avoid any connection to her past, to the theft, to Liam. She'd won smaller competitions this way, built a quiet reputation in design circles as an up-and-coming architect with radical ideas about sustainable living. Nothing that connected back to Lita Lewis or Mrs. Scott or the woman who'd disappeared from Chicago's architecture scene without explanation. This competition was different, bigger, the kind of opportunity that could change everything. Lita worked until her eyes burned, refining every detail, perfecting every measurement. Shane slept in the next room, his soft snores punctuated by the whir of his hearing aids charging on the nightstand. Everything she did for him. Every sacrifice, every late night, every compromise with exhaustion. The submission deadline was midnight. She uploaded her portfolio at 11:45, then sat back and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what winning might mean. Financial security, recognition, the chance to build something that mattered. The chance to prove that Gregory Mitchell had been wrong, that Liam had been wrong, that she was exactly as talented as she'd always believed, with or without their approval. Her phone buzzed with a confirmation email. Submission received. She was in the running. Lita looked around their small apartment, the thrift store furniture, the drawings Shane had taped to every wall, the life they'd built from nothing but determination and love. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. And if she won this competition, if Marcus Chen's designs caught the right attention, maybe it could be even more. Maybe she could give Shane the life he deserved. Maybe she could finally prove that leaving had been worth the cost. Outside, Detroit slept under winter stars, a city of second chances and stubborn survivors. Lita Lewis closed her laptop and allowed herself the dangerous luxury of hope. Not for reconciliation, not for Liam, but for herself. For the woman she was becoming in the ruins of who she'd been. Chapter 3. The Shattering. The pediatric wing of Chicago's St. Catherine Hospital smelled like antiseptic and hope. Liam Scott stood in the back of the auditorium, champagne flute untouched in his hand, wondering why he'd bothered coming to this charity gala when every face in the room reminded him of how empty success felt. Partner at Henderson and Associates, corner office with views of the lake, his name on buildings across the city, everything he'd sacrificed for, everything he'd chosen over her, and it all tasted like ash. Liam, Patricia from the zoning board waved him over. You must meet the keynote speaker. She's pioneering the most incredible work with hearing-impaired children. He followed because refusing would be rude, because networking was expected, because standing alone with his thoughts was worse. The speaker was already on stage, a striking woman in her 40s whose passion radiated through every word. The children you see in these images, she said, advancing to the next slide, are beneficiaries of the Riverside Community Project. Affordable housing designed specifically for families with deaf and hard-of-hearing children. Solar-powered, sustainable, and equipped with visual alert systems integrated into the architecture itself. The screen showed a small neighborhood of beautiful, modest homes, families on porches, kids playing in a shared courtyard, and in the corner of one photo, a woman Liam hadn't seen in over 4 years. His champagne glass hit the floor. Everyone turned at the crash. Liam barely noticed. He was staring at the screen, at Lita's profile as she knelt beside a young boy, helping him with something out of frame. She looked older, thinner, but unmistakably her. And the boy had his eyes, his jaw, his exact shade of dark hair. The project architect wishes to remain anonymous, the speaker continued, but her vision has transformed how we think about accessible housing. This single mother has created an entire community while raising her own son, who you can see here with his mother. Single mother. Her own son. Liam's legs moved without permission. He was pushing through the crowd, desperate to get closer to the screen, to see better, to confirm what his heart already knew, but his mind refused to accept. "Sir, are you all right?" Someone grabbed his elbow. He shook them off, eyes locked on the image. The boy wore hearing aids, small modern devices that caught the light. He was laughing at something, and even in a still photograph, Liam could see the intelligence in his expression, the joy, the life. His son. He had a son. The presentation continued. More images of the Detroit project, testimonials from residents, data about success rates and community impact. Every slide felt like another knife because they all showed the same truth. Lita had built something extraordinary while he'd been building his career on foundations of theft and cowardice. She'd been pregnant when she left. Had to have been. The timeline screamed it. She'd walked away carrying his child and never told him, and the worst part was that he understood exactly why. When the presentation ended, Liam bolted from the auditorium. He made it to his car before the full weight of realization hit. His hands shook so badly he couldn't get the key in the ignition. His son. He had a son with hearing loss who he'd never met, never held, never even knew existed. A son Lita was raising alone in Detroit, building communities and changing lives while Liam had been, what? Winning contracts, impressing clients, destroying everything that mattered. He called his assistant. "Cancel everything tomorrow. Actually, cancel the rest of the week. Mr. Scott, you have the Morgan presentation. I don't care. Cancel it." He drove through the night, 6 hours straight to Detroit, fueled by coffee and the desperate need to see them with his own eyes. The address wasn't hard to find. The Riverside Community Project was featured in architectural journals, celebrated for its innovation. He found it just as dawn broke over the city. The neighborhood was exactly as the photos showed. Small, beautiful homes arranged around a central courtyard. Visual alert systems he now recognized as brilliant architectural integration. Sustainable materials and solar panels that didn't look like afterthoughts, but essential elements of the design. It was everything Lita had talked about that night 4 years ago when she'd stayed up late sketching ideas for affordable housing. the vision Mitchell had stolen, the dream Liam had helped destroy, and she'd built it anyway, without recognition, without support, without him. Movement caught his eye, a door opening at one of the houses. Lita emerged, looking exhausted even from a distance. She wore work clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, her hair pulled back. She turned to say something to someone inside, and then the boy appeared. Shane. The speaker had named him Shane. He was small for his age, maybe 4 years old, wearing a backpack almost as big as he was. The hearing aids were visible now, and Liam watched his son chatter at Lita, watched her smile and adjust the devices with practiced ease, watched them walk together toward an old sedan that had seen better days. This was his family, the one he'd lost because he'd been too afraid to speak up when it mattered. Liam sat in his car and watched them drive away, and something inside him cracked open. Not dramatically, just a quiet shattering of every excuse he'd ever made for himself, every justification, every reason he'd given for why his career had to come first. He pulled out his phone and stared at Mitchell's name in his contacts. The mentor who'd shaped his career, the man whose approval he'd valued more than his wife's dignity, the thief Liam had protected with his silence. His thumb hovered over the delete button. Then he made a different call. Henderson and Associates, how may I direct your call? This is Liam Scott. I need to schedule a board meeting, emergency session, this afternoon if possible. Mr. Scott, the board's schedule. Tell them it's about Gregory Mitchell. Tell them I have evidence of intellectual property theft. Tell them it can't wait. He hung up before she could respond. The drive back to Chicago felt longer than the drive there. Liam's mind replayed everything. Lita's face at the conference, her silence after, the pregnancy test she must have taken and never shared. She'd been scared and hurt and carrying their child, and he'd been too busy protecting his career to wonder why she'd really left. The board meeting was tense. Senior partners who'd worked with Mitchell for decades, junior associates who owed him their positions, and Liam, standing at the head of the conference table with a USB drive containing 4 years of evidence he'd been too cowardly to use. Gregory Mitchell stole a complete architectural proposal from Lita Lewis, Liam said without preamble. I have the original files, time-stamped and documented. I have her preliminary sketches. I have the submission she made to his firm, and I have his presentation at the national conference where he claimed her work as his own. I was there. I watched him do it. And when someone asked whose concept it was, I lied to protect him. The room went silent. Liam, his mentor's voice came from the speakerphone. Mitchell was in Dubai on business. We've discussed this. It was a collaborative. It was theft. And I'm prepared to go public with this evidence, unless you resign immediately and issue a formal acknowledgement of what you did. You're ending your career over this? Mitchell's laugh was sharp. Over some woman who couldn't handle the competitive nature of our field? That woman is my wife, and that competitive nature you're describing is called fraud. Ex-wife, I assume, since she clearly left you. And what makes you think the board will side with you over me? Liam looked around the table at the faces he'd worked with for years. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked calculating. None looked particularly surprised. Because I'm willing to lose everything to tell the truth. And everyone in this room knows that if this evidence becomes public, the firm faces lawsuits, reputation damage, and potentially criminal charges. Mitchell resigns and apologizes publicly, or I take this to every architecture journal, every news outlet, and every professional organization that will listen. The silence stretched. Finally, the board chairman spoke. Gregory, I think it's time we discussed your retirement package. Mitchell's rage exploded through the speaker, but Liam had stopped listening. He walked out of that conference room, out of the building, and kept walking until his phone rang with calls from partners demanding he come back, demanding he reconsider, demanding he think about his future. He answered none of them. Instead, He went to his penthouse apartment, looked around at the expensive furniture and the view he'd sold his soul for, and felt nothing but disgust. His engagement ring sat on the bathroom counter. His fiancée had left it there 2 weeks ago when she'd finally accepted that his heart belonged to a ghost. Liam picked up the ring and threw it in the trash. Then he pulled out his laptop and began typing his resignation letter. Not just from Mitchell's firm, from everything. The partnerships, the contracts, the career he'd built on compromises and cowardice. He was done choosing success over integrity, done choosing comfort over truth, done letting fear make his decisions. Outside his window, Chicago glittered in the afternoon sun, beautiful and cold and completely indifferent to one man's late-blooming conscience. But somewhere in Detroit, a woman was raising their son alone, building communities and changing lives, and she didn't even know that everything was about to change. Liam hit send on his resignation and allowed himself one moment of pure terror at what he'd just done. Then he started planning. Not how to win her back. He didn't deserve that kind of arrogance, but how to make things right, how to support his son, how to prove through actions, not words, that he'd finally found the courage she'd needed 4 years ago. It was too late to undo the damage, but maybe it wasn't too late to stop making it worse. Chapter 4. The Investigation of the Soul. Detroit in February was brutal. Liam had found a small apartment in Corktown, close enough to Lita's community project to feel like he was making progress, far enough that she wouldn't accidentally discover him before he was ready. If he'd ever be ready, if ready was even possible. The private investigator's report sat on his second-hand coffee table, and Liam couldn't stop reading it even though each word felt like a physical assault. Subject gave birth alone at Detroit Receiving Hospital. No family present. No father listed on birth certificate. Returned to work 6 weeks postpartum, leaving infant with neighbor. Multiple jobs documented. Construction drafting, freelance design work, weekend cleaning crew. Current employment, junior architect at Westfield and Partners. Estimated annual income, barely above poverty line. Child diagnosed with moderate to severe bilateral hearing loss at 8 months. Subject applied for 17 different assistance programs. Sold personal belongings to afford initial hearing aids. Currently behind on payment plan for upgraded devices needed as child grows. Liam had to stop reading there because his hands were shaking too badly to hold the pages. She'd done it all alone. Every terrifying moment of pregnancy, every sleepless night with a newborn, every doctor's appointment where she'd learned her son couldn't hear properly. She'd faced it without support, without help, without the man who should have been there, because that man had chosen his career over her dignity. The investigator had been thorough, too thorough. The report included photos, Lita leaving for work before sunrise, Shane bundled against the cold, Lita at the grocery store, carefully calculating prices, Lita at the library with Shane, both of them bent over books about sign language. One photo showed them at a park. Shane was laughing at something, his hands moving in signs Lita was teaching him, and the joy on both their faces was so pure it made Liam want to put his fist through a wall. He'd missed all of it. First words, first steps. The first time Shane's hearing aids let him hear his mother's voice clearly. Birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays that you don't realize matter until they're gone forever. Liam's phone rang, his former assistant calling for the 5th time this week. "Mr. Scott, please. Henderson and Associates wants to negotiate. They're willing to reinstate you, full partnership, if you'll just..." "No. But sir, you have no income. You're living in Detroit in a terrible apartment. You've destroyed your career over something that happened years ago. Please, just think about..." I said no. "And stop calling." He hung up and blocked the number. The truth was simpler than anyone seemed to understand. He didn't want his old career back. Every building he'd designed, every contract he'd won, every success he'd achieved was built on the foundation of watching Lita get erased and doing nothing. Going back would mean accepting that version of himself, and he couldn't. Not anymore. His new life in Detroit was barely a life at all. He'd taken a job at a community architecture center, teaching free design classes to kids who'd never had access to that kind of education. The pay was essentially nothing. His apartment was a studio smaller than his old walk-in closet. But for the first time in 4 years, when he looked in the mirror, he didn't completely hate the man staring back. The job counselor at the community center had been skeptical when Liam applied. "You're overqualified," she'd said, scanning his resume with obvious confusion. "Partner at a major Chicago firm. Why do you want to teach intro design to at-risk youth for minimum wage?" "Because I need to remember why I became an architect in the first place." She'd hired him, probably thinking he wouldn't last a month. He'd been there 8 weeks now, and the kids were the only thing keeping him sane. They had the same fire Lita used to have, the belief that design could change the world, that buildings could be more than just structures. They reminded him of everything he'd lost, and somehow that made it easier to keep going. One evening after class, Liam was cleaning up when he noticed a familiar figure through the window. Lita walking down the street with Shane. They passed close enough that he could see Shane's mouth moving, animated as he told his mother some story that made her laugh. The sound of her laughter, even muffled through glass, hit him like electricity. He moved to the window, knowing he should look away, unable to stop himself. Shane was taller than in the photos, his hair getting long, his backpack covered in pins of cartoon characters. He was chattering away, using both voice and signs, and Lita was responding in kind, her hands moving with fluid grace through the sign language she'd learned for him. Of course she'd learned to sign. Of course she had. She'd probably taught herself from library books while working 3 jobs and raising a toddler, because that's who Lita was, someone who saw an obstacle and learned to climb it, who faced impossibility and made it possible anyway. Shane suddenly stopped walking. He turned, looking directly at the community center window, looking directly at Liam. Liam's breath caught. For a long moment, father and son stared at each other through glass and distance and years of absence. Shane's head tilted, curious, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then Lita noticed her son had stopped. She followed his gaze to the window, and their eyes met. The world stopped. Even from across the street, Liam could see the moment recognition hit. Could see her face go pale, her body go rigid. She grabbed Shane's hand and started walking quickly, pulling him along. Shane looked back once, still confused, still curious about the sad man in the window. Then they turned a corner and were gone. Liam realized he was crying, just standing there in an empty classroom with tears running down his face like some pathetic fool who'd lost everything that mattered and had no one to blame but himself. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Stay away from us." That was it. No signature needed. He knew her anger, knew her fear, knew he deserved both. He typed back, "I'm sorry for everything. I'm not trying to—" The message wouldn't send. She'd blocked him already. Liam looked around the classroom at the sketches his students had left behind. Kids dreaming of better neighborhoods, safer homes, communities that worked. The same dreams Lita had been pursuing when Mitchell stole her work. The same passion Liam had sacrificed on the altar of his ambition. He'd thought coming to Detroit would bring him closer to redemption. Instead, it just clarified exactly how far he'd fallen and how impossible climbing back might be. But he'd keep showing up. Keep teaching these kids. Keep doing the work that mattered. Even if Lita never forgave him. Even if Shane never knew who he was. Because the alternative, going back to Chicago, rebuilding his career, pretending the last 4 years hadn't happened, would mean accepting that some lies were acceptable. That some silences were justified, that choosing yourself over the people you love was ever okay. And Liam Scott had finally learned that it wasn't. Outside, winter rain began to fall, turning Detroit's streets to rivers of gray. Liam stood at the window long after his students had gone, long after Lita and Shane had disappeared, watching the city wash itself clean and wishing redemption worked the same way. But it didn't. Redemption wasn't something that happened to you. It was something you built, piece by painful piece, with no guarantee anyone would ever care. He started sketching, not a building, a playground, specifically designed for deaf and hard-of-hearing children, with visual elements and spaces that accommodated signing, with acoustics that minimized background noise for kids with hearing aids. He'd design it, submit it to the city anonymously, fund it himself if he had to, even if it meant selling everything he had left. Not because it would make Lita forgive him, but because, somewhere in Detroit, his son deserved to play somewhere designed with him in mind. And if that was the only way Liam could be a father, by creating spaces Shane might someday enjoy, then that would have to be enough, even if it broke his heart a little more each day. Chapter 5. The Unmasking. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while Lita was reviewing shop drawings for a strip mall renovation that would pay exactly none of her bills, but looked good on her resume. Congratulations, Marcus Chen has been selected as the winner of the National Sustainable Housing Competition. Please join us for the award ceremony and collaboration meeting this Friday in Chicago. Lita read it 3 times before the words sank in. She'd won. After years of submitting under a pseudonym, hiding her identity, playing it safe, she'd actually won. The prize money alone would cover Shane's hearing aid upgrades and speech therapy for the next year. The recognition could launch her real career. This was everything she'd been working toward. And the meeting was in Chicago, the city she'd sworn never to return to. "Mama, why are you crying?" Shane looked up from his cereal, signing the question even as he spoke it. "Happy tears, baby. Mama just got some really good news. Can we get the dinosaur chicken nuggets this week?" She laughed through her tears. "Yeah, we can definitely get the dinosaur chicken nuggets." Friday came too quickly. Lita left Shane with her neighbor and took the bus to Chicago, watching the skyline emerge from farmland with a sense of dread and anticipation warring in her stomach. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on the one professional dress she owned, had practiced her acceptance speech, had told herself 100 times that she was Marcus Chen, successful architect, not Lita Lewis, abandoned wife. The foundation offices were in a glass tower downtown. Lita checked in at reception, was directed to a conference room, and told herself to breathe. Just breathe. Accept the award. Discuss the implementation plan. Get back to Shane. Simple. She opened the conference room door, and there, sitting at the table with the foundation board, was Liam. Time stopped. Her vision tunneled. For a second, she thought she might actually pass out. "Mrs. Scott, or should I say, Ms. Chen?" The foundation director stood, smiling. "We're so pleased to finally meet the genius behind these designs. Please, sit." Lita couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only stare at Liam, who looked as shocked as she felt. He stood slowly, his face pale. "You didn't tell them," Lita said, her voice barely audible. "Tell us what?" The director looked between them, confused. Liam's throat worked. "That Marcus Chen is actually Lita Lewis, that I know her, that we used to be married," Lita finished, ice in her voice. "We used to be married." The room went silent. "I didn't know it was you," Liam said quickly. "I've been consulting for the foundation on sustainable projects. When they showed me the winning entry, I recognized your design language, your style, but I didn't say anything. I hoped you'd want this opportunity, whoever you were. I didn't know you'd be here." "Liar." The word came out sharp, cutting. "You've been in Detroit. I saw you. You're following me." "I'm living there, working at the community center. I would never." "Enough." The director held up his hands. "Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting. Clearly there's history here that needs." "No." Lita turned to leave, turned to run, just like she had 4 years ago, because being in the same room with Liam felt like drowning. Keep the award. Give it to someone else. Ms. Lewis, wait. But she was already in the hallway, already stabbing the elevator button, already trying not to cry because she'd promised herself she wouldn't give him that satisfaction. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. Liam's hand caught the door. Please, just let me explain. Get away from me. She tried to push the close door button, but he stepped inside with her. I saw the photo at a charity gala, you and Shane. I didn't know about him until then, I swear. The elevator began its descent. Shane, she repeated flatly. You know his name. I know he has hearing loss. I know you've been raising him alone. I know I have no right to any of this. But he's my son, Lita. Our son. You lost the right to call him that when you stayed silent. I know I did. And I've spent every day since trying to... The elevator stopped. Lita lunged for the doors as they opened, but Liam followed her into the lobby. I quit my job, he said desperately. I exposed Mitchell. He lost everything. His position, his reputation. I made sure everyone knew what he did to you, what I did by protecting him. She spun on him. And you think that fixes anything? You think destroying your career erases 4 years of me struggling alone? No. I think it's the bare minimum of what I should have done 4 years ago. They were in the parking structure now, Lita walking fast, Liam matching her pace. He needs surgery, Liam continued, for his hearing. The investigator... You hired an investigator? She stopped so suddenly he nearly ran into her. You had someone following us? Watching my son? I needed to know if you were okay. If he was okay. We're fine. We don't need you. The surgery costs more than you make in a year. How dare you? Her voice shook with rage. How dare you investigate my finances, my life, my son? You gave up that right when you chose your career over me. I was wrong. The words exploded out of him. I was a coward, and I was wrong, and I have spent every single day since you left hating myself for it. I can't take it back. I can't undo the damage, but I can help Shane now. I can make sure he gets the medical care he needs. I don't want your guilt money. It's not about guilt. He's my son. No. Lita stepped close, her finger jabbing his chest. He's my son. Mine. I carried him when you didn't know he existed. I held him when he cried. I was there when they told me he was deaf. I learned to sign for him. I worked 3 jobs to afford his hearing aids. Me, not you, never you. I would have been there if I'd known. But you didn't know, because I left and didn't tell you. And you know what? I'd do it again. Every single time. Because my son deserves better than a father who can't stand up for what's right. Liam's face crumbled. I'm not that person anymore. I don't care who you are now. Stay away from us. She found her car, the ancient sedan she'd bought for $800 cash, and got in. Through the windshield she could see Liam standing there, tears running down his face in the middle of a parking garage, and for just a second she felt something crack in her chest. Then she remembered the conference, his silence, the way he'd watched her get erased and chosen his mentor over her. She started the car and drove away. Only when she was on the highway back to Detroit did she let herself fall apart. She pulled over at a rest stop and sobbed, her hands shaking on the steering wheel, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. He'd seen their son, knew about Shane, knew about the hearing loss and the struggle and everything she'd worked so hard to keep private. And worse, much worse, was the tiny, traitorous part of her that had seen his face and felt something other than anger, that had noticed how thin he'd gotten, how broken he looked, how his voice cracked when he said their son's name. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. What? Ms. Lewis, this is the foundation director. I want to apologize for the ambush today. We had no idea about your connection to Mr. Scott. It doesn't matter. I'm withdrawing from the competition. Please don't. Your design is extraordinary. It deserves to be built, regardless of personal history. And the prize money? I said no. She hung up. Another call came immediately. This time, she checked the caller ID, Detroit General Hospital. Her heart stopped. Ms. Lewis, this is Dr. Patterson. I'm calling about Shane. He's had an accident. The rest of the conversation was a blur. Stairs, fell, head injury, observation, neighbor brought him in. Stable but asking for you. Lita broke every traffic law getting back to Detroit. She ran through the hospital corridors, burst into Shane's room, and found him sitting up in bed with a bandage on his forehead, looking small and scared. Mama! He reached for her, and she grabbed him, held him, breathed him in. I'm here, baby, I'm here. What happened? The neighbor, Mrs. Kim, explained. Shane had been playing on the stairs, slipped, hit his head. She'd called an ambulance immediately. I was scared, Shane signed, his little hands trembling. You weren't there. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. A knock on the door. Lita looked up, expecting a doctor. It was Liam. He stood in the doorway, soaking wet from rain she hadn't even noticed falling. His eyes went straight to Shane, and the expression on his face was so raw, it hurt to see. The foundation director called me, he said quietly. Told me about the accident. I needed to see that he was okay. Shane looked at Liam with open curiosity. Mama, who's that man? Lita's arms tightened around her son. No one. He's no one. But Shane was still staring, his head tilted. He looks like me, like my pictures when I was a baby. Lita's throat closed. Liam took one step into the room, then stopped. Hi, Shane. My name is Liam. I'm a friend of your mom's, from a long time ago. Are you the man who made Mama cry? In the window? Liam's face shattered. Yeah, I am. I'm sorry about that. Why are you sad? Such a simple question, such an impossible answer. Liam's voice broke. Because I made some very bad mistakes, and they hurt people I love, people I should have protected. Shane processed this with the straightforward logic of a child. Did you say sorry? I tried, but sorry isn't always enough. Mama says everyone deserves chances, even when they mess up really bad. Lita felt something inside her chest crack wide open. Liam looked at her, his eyes bright with tears. I don't deserve chances, but Shane does. He deserves medical care. He deserves opportunities. He deserves a father who... Get out! Lita's voice was ice. Now! Lita, I said, get out! Liam looked at Shane one more time, drinking in the sight of him like a man dying of thirst. Then he turned and walked away. Shane watched him go, then looked at his mother. Mama, why won't you give him a chance? How do you explain betrayal to a child? How do you make them understand that love isn't always enough? That trust once broken sometimes stays broken? It's complicated, baby. But you said, I know what I said, but some things are too broken to fix. Shane touched the bandage on his head, thinking, am I too broken to fix? What? No. Shane, you're perfect. You're not broken at all. But my ears don't work right. The doctors fixed them with my hearing aids. Maybe the sad man can be fixed too. Lita pulled her son close and tried not to cry, because out of the mouths of children came truth so simple and devastating, it could break your heart. And hers was already breaking. Chapter 6. The Public Fall. 3 days after the hospital, Lita received a courier package at her apartment. Inside was a cashier's check for the full competition prize amount and a letter from the foundation. Ms. Lewis, regardless of your withdrawal, your design was selected by unanimous vote. The money is yours. Additionally, we're proceeding with the implementation phase. We have an anonymous donor willing to fully fund your community housing project in Detroit. No strings attached. You'll have full creative control and a team of contractors at your disposal. This is your vision. Let us help you build it." Lita stared at the check. It was more money than she'd seen in years. Enough for Shane's surgery, enough for therapy, enough to stop working 3 jobs and actually be present for her son. She knew who the anonymous donor was. Knew it like she knew her own heartbeat. Part of her wanted to tear up the check and throw it back in Liam's face. But Shane was sitting at their small kitchen table doing homework, his hearing aids whistling slightly because they needed adjustment, and pride felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She deposited the check. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how her life had become this complicated. 4 years of building walls, of protecting herself and Shane, of learning to need no one. And now Liam was back, not demanding anything, just existing in the margins of their lives, trying to help without asking for recognition. It would be easier if he was forcing his way in, easier if he was demanding rights or threatening lawyers or acting like the entitled man she'd left in Chicago. But this Liam was different, quieter, broken in ways that matched her own breaks, and she hated that she'd noticed. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. She almost ignored it, then saw the headline, "Major architecture firm embroiled in scandal. Partner exposes years of intellectual property theft." Lita sat up, heart pounding, and clicked the article. The story was everywhere. Major outlets, architecture journals, industry blogs. Liam had gone public with everything: the stolen proposal, the conference theft, his own complicity in protecting Mitchell. He'd released emails, time-stamped files, recordings of conversations where Mitchell discussed appropriating promising concepts from junior architects. But that wasn't the devastating part. The devastating part was the press conference video embedded in the article. Liam, standing in front of cameras, microphones shoved in his face, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I need to make a public statement about my own role in this," he said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. 4 years ago, I watched Gregory Mitchell present my wife's architectural proposal as his own work. I had evidence. I knew the truth. And when I was asked directly whose original concept it was, I lied to protect him. The cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Her name is Lita Lewis. She's one of the most talented architects of our generation. And I destroyed her career because I was afraid of losing mine. I chose my mentor's approval over my wife's dignity. I chose advancement over integrity. And when she left me, as she absolutely should have, I didn't fight for her. I didn't expose the truth. I just let her go and told myself I'd made the reasonable choice." "Mr. Scott, where is Ms. Lewis now?" "Building the sustainable housing projects she envisioned 4 years ago. Raising our son alone because I didn't deserve to know he existed. Succeeding despite everything I failed to do for her." "You have a child?" Liam's face crumpled. "I have a son I've never held. A son who needed medical care while I was winning contracts for buildings that mean nothing. A son who asked his mother why she wouldn't give me a chance, and she was right to say no because chances have to be earned, and I haven't earned anything." Lita couldn't breathe. "This press conference is my resignation from architecture," Liam continued. "Effective immediately, I'm surrendering my license, my certifications, and my partnership shares. The settlement money from the lawsuit against Mitchell is being donated entirely to programs supporting women architects and accessible design for people with disabilities. I'm also establishing a scholarship in Lita Lewis's name for emerging architects from underrepresented communities." "Mr. Scott, isn't this career suicide? My career was built on a foundation of lies. Destroying it isn't suicide, it's honesty. What will you do now?" "Whatever I can to make amends, teach, build, support the communities I should have been supporting all along, and stay far away from my family unless they decide I've proven myself worthy of a chance I don't deserve." The video ended. Lita sat in her dark apartment, watching it again and again and again. He'd destroyed himself, publicly, completely. Not asking for forgiveness, not demanding credit, just accepting responsibility and walking away from everything he'd valued more than her. Her phone rang. Unknown number again. "Ms. Lewis, this is Jennifer Parker from Architecture Today. We'd love to get your statement on the Mitchell scandal and Liam Scott's resignation." Lita hung up. It rang again. Different reporter. Same questions. She turned off her phone. In the next room, Shane slept peacefully, unaware that his father had just obliterated his own life in public. Unaware that the man he'd asked about was trying to atone for sins Shane didn't even know existed. Lita walked to the window and looked out at Detroit's lights. Somewhere in this city, Liam was probably alone, dealing with the aftermath of his confession. Probably regretting nothing, because that's what real change looked like. Not easy apologies or smooth explanations, but brutal, painful honesty that cost you everything. She'd wanted him to suffer, had wanted him to understand what he'd cost her, and now he did. And she felt no satisfaction, just a hollow ache where her anger used to be. The foundation's letter sat on the counter. "Anonymous donor willing to fully fund your community housing project." He was giving her back everything he'd helped take away. Not as a bargaining chip, not as leverage, just because it was right. Lita picked up her sketchbook and flipped through pages of designs. The community she'd been planning for years, the sustainable housing that could change lives, the vision Mitchell had stolen and Liam had failed to defend. She could build it now. With or without Liam's funding, with or without his public destruction of his own career, she could finally prove that her voice mattered. But looking at the designs, all she could think about was Shane's question. Maybe the sad man can be fixed too. Could he? Could anyone come back from the kind of cowardice Liam had shown? Could redemption be real, and not just a pretty story people told themselves? Lita didn't know. But for the first time in 4 years, she found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, she wanted to find out. Chapter 7. The Descent. The community center classroom was full when Liam arrived for his evening session. Kids from the neighborhood, ages ranging from elementary to high school, all there because someone had told them a former big-shot architect was teaching design for free. None of them knew why he'd left his career. None of them knew about Lita or Shane or the public implosion that had made him a cautionary tale in architecture circles. To them, he was just Mr. Scott, the teacher who actually cared about their ideas and didn't talk down to them. "All right," Liam said, setting up the projector. "Tonight, we're talking about accessible design. Who can tell me what that means?" A girl in the back raised her hand. "Making buildings people with disabilities can use?" Exactly. But here's the thing. When you design for accessibility from the start, you make buildings that work better for everyone. Ramps help people with wheelchairs, but also parents with strollers. Visual alert systems help deaf people, but also anyone in a loud environment. Good design doesn't exclude. It includes. He pulled up slides showing the Riverside project, Lita's community. He'd taken photos from public streets, careful never to invade their privacy, but needing to show his students what real innovation looked like. This housing development was designed by an architect named Lita Lewis, he said, and saying her name still hurt. Every element serves multiple purposes. The solar panels provide power, but also create covered walkways. The courtyard layout encourages community while providing sightlines for safety. The visual alert systems are beautiful architectural features, not afterthoughts. "Is she famous?" one of the kids asked. "She should be. She's brilliant. But the industry didn't recognize her work for a long time." "Why not?" Liam paused, weighing honesty against appropriateness. "Because people with power sometimes take credit for other people's ideas, and sometimes the people who could speak up choose to stay silent." The kids nodded like this made perfect sense. and Liam realized they probably understood betrayal better than he'd given them credit for. These were kids from neighborhoods where promises got broken every day, where adults failed them constantly. His story wasn't unique to them, it was just reality. After class, he was erasing the whiteboard when he saw movement outside the window. A small figure watching from across the street. Shane. Liam's heart stopped. His son stood there with his backpack, staring at the community center with open curiosity. Alone. Liam moved to the door, scanning the street for Lita. No sign of her. Just Shane, who shouldn't be alone this late. He stepped outside carefully, not wanting to scare the boy. "Hey, Shane. What are you doing here?" Shane signed and spoke simultaneously. "I followed the bus route. Mama doesn't know." "She's going to be worried sick. Does she know where you are?" "I left a note. It said I went to find the sad man." Liam crouched down to Shane's level. "I'm calling your mom right now, okay? You can't just leave without telling her." "I wanted to talk to you." "About what?" Shane's little face was so serious, so much like looking in a mirror of himself as a child. "Are you my daddy?" The world tilted. Liam's throat closed. He wanted to say yes, wanted to claim this child who looked at him with such open curiosity. But Shane wasn't asking if Liam was his father biologically. He was asking if Liam had earned that title. "Biologically, yes," Liam said carefully. "But being a daddy is more than biology. It's showing up, being there, protecting the people you love, and I haven't done any of those things for you. Mama showed me a picture from her wedding. You look the same but sadder. I am sadder. I made choices that hurt your mom, hurt both of you, even though you weren't born yet." Shane processed this. "Can you fix it?" "I'm trying. But some things take a long time to fix. And sometimes people don't want to be around you while you're trying, and that's okay. They get to decide." "I want you around." The words hit like a physical blow. Liam had to close his eyes against the tears threatening to fall. "Shane, that's not your choice to make. That's your mom's choice. She's the one who's been there for you every single day. She's the one who matters. But you're sad, and you're trying to be better. Mama says that's what's important." A car screeched to a stop at the curb. Lita jumped out, her face a mix of terror and fury. "Shane Lewis, you get in this car right now." Shane's eyes widened. He hurried to the car, and Lita grabbed him in a fierce hug before checking him over for injuries. "You can't do that. You can't just leave and—" Her voice broke. "I thought something happened to you." "I'm sorry, Mama. I just wanted to talk to him." Lita's eyes met Liam's over Shane's head. The fear in them was giving way to fury. "Get in the car, baby. We'll talk at home." Shane obeyed, and Lita straightened, walking over to where Liam stood. "I didn't ask him to come," Liam said immediately. "I was about to call you. Stay away from him." Her voice shook. "Stay away from both of us. I mean it, Liam. You can't just... You don't get to..." She stopped, composing herself. "He asked if I'm his father," Liam said quietly. "I told him biology doesn't make someone a dad. That you're the one who matters. That you get to decide if I'm ever part of his life." Lita's expression cracked. "He saw your press conference. Someone at school showed him. He has questions I don't know how to answer." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to disappear. I want you to have stayed disappeared 4 years ago. I want..." She stopped, breathing hard. "I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning every time I see you." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it." "Sorry doesn't fix anything." "I know. But it's all I have." They stood there in the growing darkness, years of pain hanging between them like a physical barrier. "The foundation approved my housing project," Lita said finally. "Full funding. They told me about the anonymous donor." Liam said nothing. "It's you, isn't it? You gave them your entire settlement from the Mitchell lawsuit." "It's your money." He stole your work. You deserve every penny. I don't want your guilt money. Then don't think of it as mine. Think of it as justice, as what should have been yours 4 years ago." Lita laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You can't buy forgiveness, Liam. I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm trying to do what's right. 4 years too late. Yes, 4 years too late. But that doesn't mean I should stop trying." From the car, Shane was watching them through the window, his small face pressed against the glass. "He needs surgery soon," Lita said, her voice softer. "For his hearing. The doctor says the window for optimal results is closing." "I know. I can. The competition money covers it. I don't need your help." "I know you don't need it. But I'm offering it anyway, not as his father, as someone who owes you more than he can ever repay." Lita looked at him for a long moment. "You really destroyed your career. For what? To feel better about yourself? To stop being the man who watched you get erased? Even if it's too late to matter to you, it matters to me. Why now? Why not 4 years ago? Because 4 years ago I was a coward. I'm still a coward, but I'm trying to be a little less of one every day." A car drove past, its headlights illuminating Lita's face. She looked exhausted, beautiful and exhausted, and still the strongest person Liam had ever known. "I need to get Shane home," she said finally. "Yeah, of course." She turned to go, then stopped. "The community center. You're really teaching there?" "Every Tuesday and Thursday. Free design classes for kids who wouldn't otherwise have access." "Why?" "Because someone once told me that architecture could change the world. I forgot that for a while. I'm trying to remember." Lita's expression was unreadable. "Don't get close to Shane again. If he tries to find you, you call me immediately. Understand?" "Yes." She got in her car and drove away, taking with her the only two people in the world who mattered to Liam. He stood there long after her taillights disappeared, thinking about Shane's question. "Can you fix it?" The honest answer was, probably not. But he could keep trying, could keep teaching these kids, keep doing the work that mattered, keep being the man he should have been all along. Even if Lita never forgave him, even if Shane never knew him as anything but the sad man, even if the rest of his life was spent in the shadow of the moment he'd stayed silent, because the alternative, giving up, going back, accepting that some failures were permanent, would mean everything he'd lost had been for nothing. And Liam refused to let that be true. Chapter 8. The Breaking of Walls. Shane's surgery was scheduled for the first week of March. Lita had circled the date on her calendar, had arranged time off work, had explained to Shane in simple terms what would happen. He'd been brave about it, the way kids are brave when they don't fully understand what they're facing. The night before the surgery, Shane couldn't sleep. "Mama, will it hurt?" "The doctors will make sure you don't feel anything during the surgery. After, it might hurt a little, but they'll give you medicine." "Will I be able to hear better?" "That's what we're hoping for, baby." "Will I hear like normal kids?" Lita's heart broke. "You are normal, Shane. Your ears just work differently. The surgery will help them work even better." He was quiet for a while then. "If I can hear better, will my daddy want to meet me?" The question came out of nowhere, and Lita wasn't prepared for it. "What makes you think that?" "The kids at school say daddies leave when something's wrong with their kids. If I get fixed, maybe he'll come back." Lita pulled Shane close, breathing through the rage and grief warring in her chest. "Listen to me. Nothing is wrong with you. You are perfect exactly as you are. If your daddy isn't here, it's because of choices he made. Adult choices that have nothing to do with you." But the sad man said, "Shane, we talked about this. You can't go looking for him." "I didn't. He's at my school now." Lita's blood went cold. "What?" "He's teaching a class, about buildings. Mrs. Rodriguez said he used to be famous, but gave it all up to help kids like me. Of course he was. Of course Liam had found another way to orbit their lives without directly intruding. The next morning, Lita dropped Shane off at her neighbor's house and went directly to Shane's elementary school. She found the principal in her office. "I need to know about the architecture program." Principal Martinez looked up, surprised. "The volunteer program. It's wonderful. Mr. Scott has been teaching our students about sustainable design, career opportunities in architecture. The kids love him." "How long has he been doing this?" "About a month. He approached us offering to volunteer. Given his credentials, we were thrilled." "Why? Is there a problem?" Lita's hands clenched. "That's my ex-husband, and he's teaching classes my son attends without my permission." Martinez's expression changed. "I'm so sorry. We had no idea. I can remove him from the program immediately." "No." The word surprised Lita as much as it did the principal. "No, don't. Just make sure he's never alone with Shane. Ever." "Of course, Ms. Lewis, if there's any concern about safety." "There isn't. He's not dangerous. He's just—" What was Liam? A coward who'd found courage too late? A father who'd missed everything that mattered? A man trying to make amends in all the wrong ways? Complicated. That afternoon, Lita was reviewing final construction plans for her housing project when someone knocked on her apartment door. She opened it to find Liam standing there, looking nervous. "I heard about the surgery tomorrow. I wanted to see if you needed anything." "How did you know where I live?" "The foundation. They needed an address for project communications. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come. I'll go." "Wait." The word came out before she could stop it. "How did you end up teaching at Shane's school?" Liam looked uncomfortable. "They needed volunteers for enrichment programs. I offered. I didn't know which class he was in until I saw him in the room." "You should have left." "I did. I transferred to a different grade level the next day." "But you stayed at the school. These kids deserve opportunities. Just because Shane goes there doesn't mean they should lose access to programs." Lita wanted to be angry, wanted to accuse him of manipulating the situation, but his logic was infuriatingly sound. "You can't keep orbiting our lives," she said. "It's confusing for Shane. It's confusing for me." "What do you want me to do? Leave Detroit?" "I don't know." The frustration burst out of her. "I don't know what I want. 4 years ago, I wanted you to stand up for me. You didn't. Now you're standing up for everything, destroying your career, teaching kids for free, funding my projects, and I don't know what to do with any of it." "You don't have to do anything with it. I'm not asking for forgiveness or access or—" "Then what are you asking for?" Liam looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke it. "Permission to be in the same city as my son without feeling like a criminal." The honesty of it took her breath away. "He asks about you," she admitted. "Constantly. He saw your press conference, heard the other kids talking about the famous architect teaching at their school. He's putting pieces together and I can't keep lying to him." "What do you want to tell him?" "The truth. That you're his father, that you made mistakes, that I left because of those mistakes." She paused. "But he's 4 years old, Liam. How do I explain that you weren't there because I didn't tell you about him? How do I make him understand that without making him blame himself? You tell him it's my fault, all of it. Because it is. But it's not. I chose to leave. I chose not to tell you I was pregnant. I chose to keep him from you. You chose to protect yourself and your child from someone who'd proven he couldn't be trusted. That's not fault. That's survival." They stood there in her doorway, years of pain and misunderstanding between them, and for the first time, Lita felt something shift. "The surgery tomorrow," she said quietly. "It's going to be scary, for both of us." "Do you want me there?" Every instinct screamed no. But looking at Liam's face, seeing the desperate hope mixed with resignation, she thought about Shane's question. Will my daddy want to meet me? Not in the room, she said finally. Not with Shane, but in the waiting room, if you want. Liam's breath caught. Are you sure? No, but Shane asked if his daddy would want to meet him if he got fixed. I need him to see that you showed up, that his worth isn't conditional on his hearing. God, Lita. Liam's voice broke. I never wanted him to think. I know, but kids internalize things. They blame themselves. He needs to know you're here because you want to be, not because he earned it. I'll be there, whatever you need. The next morning, the hospital was cold and sterile and terrifying. Shane was brave until they came to take him back for prep. Then he clung to Lita and started crying. I'm scared, Mama. I know, baby, but I'll be right here when you wake up. I promise. Don't leave. Never. I'm not going anywhere. They took him back, and Lita stood there feeling like her heart was being extracted through her chest. She made it to the waiting room before her knees gave out. And there was Liam, sitting in the corner with coffee and a beaten-up paperback, looking as terrified as she felt. Their eyes met across the room. He stood, cross to her, and without asking permission, pulled her into his arms. Lita should have pushed him away, should have maintained the walls she'd spent 4 years building. But she was so tired and so scared, and he was solid and warm, and for just a moment she let herself lean on someone else. He's going to be fine, Liam whispered against her hair. He's strong, like his mother. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Don't do this. Do what? Be comforting, be here, be the person I needed 4 years ago. It's too late for that. I know it's too late. But Shane needed his father to show up today, and for once in my useless life, I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. They sat together in tense silence, watching the clock, waiting for updates. Other families came and went. Liam got more coffee. Lita pretended to read a magazine. Finally, the surgeon emerged. Ms. Lewis, the surgery went perfectly. He's in recovery now. You can see him soon. Lita nearly collapsed with relief. Liam caught her elbow, steadying her. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you. When they let her back to recovery, Shane was groggy but smiling. Lita held his hand and cried and laughed and promised him ice cream for dinner. Did it work? Shane signed, his speech slurred from anesthesia. The doctor says it went great, but it'll take time to heal before we know how much it helped. Is my daddy here? Lita's breath caught. What? You said he'd be here, that he wanted to meet me. She hadn't said that, had only said Liam would be in the waiting room, but Shane's hopeful face was so open, so trusting. He's here, she admitted, in the waiting room. Can I see him? Every protective instinct screamed no, but she'd promised Shane that his father's presence wasn't conditional, that showing up mattered. For a minute, just a minute, she went to the waiting room where Liam was pacing like a caged animal. He's asking for you. Liam's face went white. What? He wants to meet you, just for a minute. He's tired and emotional and probably won't remember half of this tomorrow, but he's asking. Lita, what do I say to him? I have no idea, but you've got one chance to not screw this up. Make it count. She led him to recovery, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was a mistake. This was opening a door she'd never be able to close, but it was too late to change course. Shane's eyes lit up when Liam walked in. You came. Liam approached the bed slowly, like Shane was made of glass. Hi, Shane. I'm Liam. Your mom said you wanted to meet me. Are you really my daddy? Liam's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Lita, who nodded permission. Yes, Liam said, his voice breaking. I'm really your father. Where were you? The question was simple, The answer was impossible. I made mistakes, Liam said carefully. Big ones. Mistakes that hurt your mum, and that's why we're not together. But those mistakes were never about you. You are perfect and wonderful, and I wish I'd known about you from the beginning. Shane processed this with the straightforward logic of a child. Mama says everyone makes mistakes. Your mama is right, but some mistakes cost more than others, and my mistakes cost me the chance to know you. Do you want to know me now? Liam's face crumpled completely. He looked at Lita, silently begging permission for an answer she wasn't ready to give. That's up to your mama, he said finally. But yes, more than anything in the world. Shane smiled, his eyes already closing from exhaustion. Okay, that's good. Within seconds, he was asleep. Liam and Lita stood on opposite sides of Shane's hospital bed, their son between them, and the weight of everything unsaid pressed down like atmosphere. Thank you, Liam whispered, for letting me meet him. Lita couldn't speak, could only nod, because she'd just done the most terrifying thing she could imagine. She'd let Liam Scott back into their lives, and she had no idea if it was the bravest thing she'd ever done or the biggest mistake. Chapter 9. The storm breaks. 3 weeks after the surgery, Shane's hearing had improved dramatically. The audiologist was thrilled with the results. Shane was thrilled to hear birds clearly for the first time, and Lita was exhausted from fielding Shane's constant questions about his daddy. She'd set strict boundaries after the hospital. Liam could send letters, could contribute financially to Shane's care, could even send birthday and holiday gifts, but no visits, no phone calls, no direct contact. Liam had agreed to everything without argument, which somehow made it worse. The letters started arriving weekly, not pushy or demanding, just updates about his work at the community center, descriptions of the kids he was teaching, stories about Detroit that Shane might find interesting. He never asked to see Shane, never begged for more access, just existed at a respectful distance, proving through consistency that he wasn't going anywhere. Shane treasured every letter. He'd make Lita read them multiple times, would sleep with them under his pillow, would dictate responses that Lita would transcribe and send back. Tell him about the bird I saw. Tell him I got a star on my math test. Tell him I miss him. That last one broke something in Lita's chest. Baby, you barely know him. But he's my daddy. I'm supposed to miss my daddy. How do you argue with that logic? The Riverside expansion project was moving faster than expected. Lita's designs were being built exactly as she'd envisioned them, and the foundation kept praising her vision. She'd been interviewed by architecture journals, invited to speak at conferences, recognized as an emerging leader in sustainable design. Everything she'd dreamed of was finally happening. And it was funded by money Liam had given up everything to provide. The irony wasn't lost on her. One evening in late March, Lita was working late at the project site when rain started falling. Not gentle spring rain, but a violent storm that came out of nowhere, turning the construction site into a maze of mud and flooding foundations. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Lewis? This is Principal Martinez. Shane's still at school. The after-school program coordinator's car broke down, and with this storm, we can't safely get the kids home. Can you pick him up? Lita looked at the flooding site, the unfinished structures that needed her supervision. I'm at least an hour away with this weather. Is there anyone else who... We've called all the emergency contacts. You're the only one listed. Because Lita had always been the only one. No family nearby, no backup, just her, handling everything alone like she always had. I'll be there as soon as I can. She made it 15 minutes before her car stalled in standing water. The engine wouldn't restart. Rain pounded the windshield so hard she couldn't see more than a few feet. She called the school. My car died. I'm trying to get an Uber, but the wait time is over an hour. Ms. Lewis, there's a severe weather warning. The school is on emergency lockdown. We can't release students, even if you were here. Is there anyone else you trust to pick up Shane once the weather clears? Lita's mind went blank. Then, slowly, filled with one name she didn't want to admit. Give me 5 minutes. She pulled up her blocked contacts and stared at Liam's number. Her finger hovered over the unblock button. Shane was scared, alone at school during a storm, asking for her. She unblocked the number and called. Liam answered on the first ring. Lita, I need help. 20 minutes later, Liam's car pulled up next to her stalled sedan. He got out in the pouring rain, looking like a drowned cat, and tapped on her window. Are you okay? Shane's stuck at school. Emergency lockdown because of the weather. I can't get there, and they won't release him to anyone not on the approved list. Add me to the list. What? Call the school. Have them add me as an emergency contact. I'll get him. Liam, I can't just... Lita, he's scared and he needs someone. Let me help, please. She wanted to refuse, wanted to call a taxi, an Uber, walk through the storm herself. But the rational part of her brain knew Liam was right. Shane needed help now, not in an hour when she finally made it there. Okay, yes. She called the school and authorized Liam as an emergency pickup. Then she sat in her flooded car and tried not to panic about what she'd just done. An hour later, her phone rang. I have him, Liam said, his voice tight with emotion. He's safe, a little scared, but safe. Can I talk to him? Of course. Shane's voice came on the line, small and scared. Mama, I was so scared. The thunder was really loud. I know, baby. I'm so sorry I couldn't get there. But Liam picked you up. You're safe now. He said he'd take me to his apartment until you can get me. Is that okay? Lita closed her eyes. Liam was asking permission, even though he had every legal right to take his son to his own home, still respecting her boundaries even in an emergency. That's okay. I'll be there as soon as the weather clears. By the time a tow truck got her car started and she made it to Liam's address, it was after 9. She stood outside the door of his building, shaking from cold and adrenaline and fear, and knocked. Liam answered immediately. Behind him, she could see Shane asleep on a couch, wrapped in blankets. He was exhausted, Liam said quietly. We had dinner, just mac and cheese from a box. I'm not much of a cook, and he fell asleep watching cartoons. Lita stepped inside, her eyes taking in the tiny studio apartment. It was smaller than her place, barely furnished, clearly the home of someone living on almost nothing. Her housing project designs were pinned to every wall. You kept them. Of course I did. They're brilliant. She walked to Shane, brushing wet hair from his forehead. He stirred, but didn't wake. Thank you, she said without looking at Liam. For getting him, for keeping him safe. You don't have to thank me. He's my son. But you didn't have to. You could have used this as leverage, could have demanded visitation rights or... Lita. Liam's voice was sharp. I helped because Shane needed help, not because I wanted something in return. She finally turned to face him, and something in her chest cracked open. Why are you really here? In Detroit, living like this, teaching for free? Why didn't you just go back to Chicago and rebuild your career? Because every building I designed there was built on lies. Because my son is here. Because the woman I love is here, even though I have no right to her anymore. The words hung in the air between them. Don't, Lita whispered. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. I loved you when I failed you. I love you now, watching you build the future you always deserved. And I know you don't love me back anymore, and that's okay. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to be near you, to help when you need it. to be Shane's father if you'll let me." Lita's eyes filled with tears. "You broke my heart." "I know. You watched them steal my work and said nothing." "I know. You chose your career over our marriage." "I know. And now you expect me to just forgive you because you gave up that career? Because you're teaching kids and living in a tiny apartment and saying the right words?" "No." Liam's voice was steady. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just expect to keep showing up, every day, for the rest of my life, whether you ever forgive me or not." The rain pounded against the windows. Shane slept peacefully on the couch, and Lita Lewis stood in the middle of a man's apartment and felt 4 years of walls beginning to crumble. "He asked me today if you were coming to his birthday party next month." Liam's breath caught. "What did you tell him?" "I said I'd think about it." She wiped her eyes. "He's drawing you pictures, writing you stories. He made a Father's Day card in March because he didn't want to wait until June." "Lita, I'm terrified," she interrupted. "Terrified of letting you in. Terrified of you leaving again. Terrified that Shane will get hurt if this doesn't work." "I won't leave. I swear to you, I won't." "You can't promise that. Life happens. People change. You changed once before, maybe you'll change again." "Then don't trust my promises. Trust my actions. I've been here 6 months. I've respected every boundary. I've never asked for more than you're willing to give, and I'll keep doing that for as long as it takes." Lita looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by worn jeans and a t-shirt from some community event. The arrogance he'd worn like armor was gone, replaced by humility that looked almost painful. He'd lost weight, gained shadows under his eyes, looked like a man who'd been broken and was trying to figure out how to be whole again, just like her. "One dinner," she said finally, "with Shane, not at your place or mine, somewhere neutral." "Okay. And if he gets overwhelmed, if it's too much, we leave immediately." "Okay. And this doesn't mean I'm not saying—" "I know," Liam said softly. "You're not promising anything. You're just giving me a chance to be a father to our son. That's more than I deserve." Lita picked up Shane, who murmured sleepily against her shoulder. "Thank you. For today. For respecting the boundaries. For not pushing. Thank you for trusting me enough to call." She carried Shane to the door, then paused. "The designs on your wall. You've been studying them. Every day. They're teaching me more about architecture than any job I ever had. They're yours too, you know. You helped me work through some of the early concepts, before everything fell apart. They were always yours. I just got to watch genius at work." Lita didn't trust herself to respond. She just walked out into the rain with her son in her arms and her heart in pieces, and the terrifying knowledge that maybe, possibly, she was starting to believe in second chances, even if they scared her more than anything else in the world. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. Shane's birthday fell on a Sunday in May, when Detroit was finally shaking off winter and remembering how to be beautiful. Lita had planned a small party at the park, just Shane, a few school friends, cake, and carefully controlled chaos. Shane had asked one question over and over: "Will my daddy be there?" Lita had finally said yes. Now she stood in the park, watching Shane play with his friends, and tried not to watch the parking lot for Liam's car. She'd told herself this was for Shane, just a birthday party, nothing more. But her heart was pounding like she was about to jump off a cliff. Liam arrived exactly on time, carrying a wrapped present that looked homemade. He approached cautiously, like he was walking through a minefield. "Hi. Hi." Lita's voice came out steadier than she felt. "He's been asking about you all morning." "I almost didn't come. Thought maybe it would be easier if I didn't." "But you did." "I promised him I would. I'm done breaking promises to my son." Shane spotted them and came running, his new hearing aids gleaming in the sunlight. "Daddy, you came!" The word, "Daddy," said so naturally, so easily, hit Liam like a physical blow. He dropped to his knees and Shane crashed into him, hugging him tight. "Of course I came. Happy birthday, Shane. Did you bring a present?" "Shane," Lita scolded, "what did we talk about?" "Sorry, Mama. I just really wanted to know." Liam laughed, actually laughed, and Lita felt something warm unfurl in her chest at the sound. "I did bring something, but you have to open it later, with your other presents." The party proceeded in a blur of cake and games and laughter. Lita watched Liam with Shane, careful, attentive, learning how to be a father in real time. He didn't try to take over or prove anything, just followed Shane's lead, answered his endless questions, and looked at their son like he was the most precious thing in the universe. When Shane opened Liam's present later, it was a handmade book. Every page was a different drawing of buildings, with explanations written in simple language about how architecture could change communities. "I made it for you," Liam said, as Shane flipped through the pages, his eyes wide. "Because your mama is the most brilliant architect I know, and I thought you should understand what she does." Shane looked up at Lita. "Is this true, Mama? Can buildings really help people?" "That's what I've always believed." "Then I want to be an architect too, like you and Daddy." The words were so innocent, so full of hope, and they broke something in Lita that had been holding firm for 4 years. Later, after the other kids had gone home and Shane was playing on the swings, Lita and Liam sat together on a park bench. The silence between them wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. "He's amazing," Liam said softly. "You've done an incredible job raising him." "I didn't have much choice." "You had every choice. You could have given up, could have asked family for help, could have tracked me down and demanded support. But you didn't. You just kept going. What else was I supposed to do? Most people would have broken. You didn't. You built something beautiful instead." Lita was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I was so angry at you. For years. I'd lie awake at night thinking of all the things I'd say if I ever saw you again. All the ways I'd make you understand what you'd cost us. You had every right to be angry. But now, I don't know what I feel anymore. You're not the man I left. You're different. I destroyed who I was. I'm trying to build someone better from the wreckage. Are you happy? Here in Detroit, teaching, living like this?" Liam considered the question. "I'm not miserable. That's more than I can say for my last 4 years in Chicago. But happy? I don't know if I get to be happy after what I did." "That's not how life works, Liam. You don't get punished forever." "Maybe. But I don't need to be happy. I just need to be better. For Shane. For you, if you'll let me." Shane ran over, breathless and smiling. "Mama, can Daddy push me on the swings?" "If he wants to. I'd love to." Lita watched them together at the swing set, Liam pushing gently, Shane laughing, both of them talking about buildings and birds and birthday cake. Father and son, learning each other from scratch. Her phone buzzed. A message from the construction foreman. "Major problem with foundation at Site 3. Need your input immediately." Lita sighed. Work never stopped, even on her son's birthday. She called Liam over. "I have to deal with a work emergency. Can you stay with Shane for an hour? We're literally in a public park, there are other families around and—" "Yes, of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be back as soon as I can." An hour turned into 2, because the foundation problem was worse than expected. By the time Lita made it back to the park, the sun was setting, and most families had gone home. She found Liam and Shane sitting under a tree, Shane asleep with his head in Liam's lap, while Liam sketched in a notebook. "I'm so sorry," Lita said, rushing over. "The problem was bigger than—" It's fine. He fell asleep about 20 minutes ago. Didn't want to move him. Lita sat down beside them, looking at her sleeping son. What are you drawing? A playground, specifically designed for kids with hearing aids, funded by the money I have left from selling my Chicago apartment. Liam, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. But there are so many kids like Shane who deserve spaces designed with them in mind. And I have the skills to make it happen. So why wouldn't I? They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned pink and gold. I've been thinking, Lita said finally, about the community project. We're expanding faster than expected. I need help. I know some excellent architects I could recommend. I'm asking you. Liam's pencil stopped moving. What? The project needs someone who understands sustainable design, who cares about community impact, who'll work for basically nothing because we're reinvesting everything into the development. She paused. Someone who designed half these concepts with me 4 years ago, even if he won't take credit for it. Lita, you can't want me. I don't know what I want, but I know you're good at this. I know you care. And I know Shane asks about you every single day. Maybe it's time to stop fighting the inevitable. What's the inevitable? She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man she'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, buried under mistakes and regret, but still there, still possible. You're Shane's father. You're going to be in his life, in our lives. Fighting against that is exhausting. So what are you saying? I'm saying come work on the project. Prove that you can be a partner, not in our personal lives, not yet, maybe never, but in this, in building something that matters. Liam's eyes filled with tears. You'd really trust me with this? I'm trusting you with my son. The designs are the easy part. Shane stirred, blinking awake. He saw both his parents sitting beside him and smiled. Are we going home? Yeah, baby, we're going home. Can Daddy come? Lita took a breath. Not tonight, but he's going to be around more, working with Mama on the building project. You'll see him a lot. Every day? She looked at Liam, who looked back at her with such careful hope it hurt. Maybe not every day, but often, if that's okay with you. Shane sat up, suddenly awake. Really? Daddy's going to help you build the houses? If he wants to. I want to, Liam said immediately, more than anything. Shane hugged them both, his small arms barely reaching around, and Lita felt something inside her chest crack open completely. Not healing, not yet. But the possibility of healing, the beginning of forgiveness. They walked to the parking lot together, Lita carrying Shane while Liam carried the leftover party supplies. A family, sort of. Not traditional, not simple, but theirs. Thank you, Liam said as they reached her car, for trusting me, for giving me this chance. Don't make me regret it. I won't, I swear. Lita buckled Shane into his car seat, then turned back to Liam. On impulse, or maybe not impulse, maybe something deeper, she hugged him, quick and fierce and over before either of them could overthink it. See you Monday at the site, she said. 7 a.m. Don't be late. I won't be. She drove away with Shane chattering excitedly in the back seat about having both parents working together, and Lita tried not to think about what she'd just agreed to, tried not to wonder if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or the bravest choice. But watching Shane's joy in the rearview mirror, seeing how much lighter he looked now that his father was going to be present, she thought maybe it didn't matter which one it was, because some risks were worth taking, some second chances were worth the fear, and sometimes the only way to move forward was to let the past in just enough to learn from it. Lita didn't know if she'd ever fully forgive Liam, didn't know if they'd ever be anything more than co-parents working together for their son. But she knew this. Shane deserved a father who showed up, and Liam had been showing up consistently for months now. That had to count for something, and maybe, just maybe, it could count for everything. The end.